Hello aspirants, a happy new year to all of you, and this is the first test that you have taken in this new year, and I hope it has given you a lot of inspiration and motivation to fare well, work hard and achieve your dreams for this 2019. So in today's video we are going to discuss the answers for the test which took place today on the 7th of January 2019, and this test is about modern Indian history and some current affairs. So this modern Indian history we are going to deal from the year 1707 up until 1857. So for a period of 150 years. The questions have been prepared in such a way that almost every aspect or every important events around these 150 years have been captured, and irrespective of the way how you have answered or how you feel that you have answered, this is a learning experience and please make good use of this. So we will go to the discussion and we will try to dissect each and every question present in today's test. Starting with the first question. Consider the following statements regarding the relationship between Sikhs and Mughals. The first statement, the Mughal relationship with the Sikhs turned inimical under Jahangir. The second statement, Guru Tegh Bahadur was executed by Jahangir as he refused to convert to Islam. Now, the first statement is correct. The Mughal relationship with the Sikhs turned inimical under Jahangir because Jahangir ordered the execution of the Sikh Guru Arjan Dev, and Guru Tegh Bahadur was also executed by the Mughals but not by Jahangir. He was executed by Aurangzeb. So the second statement is not correct. So which of the above statements is or are correct? The answer is one only, option A. Let's go on to the next question. Consider the following statements. Shahu was accepted by the Mughals as the rightful heir to the Maratha throne. This is the first statement. The second statement is Shahu fought against Tarabai and her son Shivaji too to take over the Maratha throne. Well, the first statement is not correct because Shahu was not accepted by the Mughals as the rightful heir to the Marathas, and they still released Shahu so that Shahu can go and fight for his throne with other Maratha influences, main important people. And in this case it was Tarabai with her son Shivaji too, an infant who was sitting in the throne. So the second statement is correct, where after being released by the Mughals under Bahadur Shah, Shahu went and fought with Tarabai, who was controlling the Mughal empire through her son Shivaji II, who was an infant who was placed in the throne. Tarabai was controlling the administration by placing her son in the throne, and Shahu went and fought with Tarabai, and finally Shahu emerged victorious and he became the Maratha emperor. So for this question, the first statement is wrong, the second statement is correct. The answer is 2 only. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements. Bahadur Shah I was succeeded by Jahandar Shah, who was helped by the wazir named Zulfikar Khan. Second statement, Bahadur Shah I abolished jizya tax imposed by Aurangzeb in order to appease the Hindu kings. Now, Bahadur Shah I, as it is mentioned here, is actually the son of Aurangzeb. The first statement says that Bahadur Shah was succeeded by Jahandar Shah, and this Jahandar Shah was helped by this Zulfikar Khan. The first statement is absolutely correct. Bahadur Shah was in fact succeeded by Jahandar Shah, who was helped by Zulfikar Khan. The second statement, Bahadur Shah I abolished jizya tax, they say. This is not correct. It was abolished under the reign of Jahandar Shah only and not Bahadur Shah. Bahadur Shah took a lot of conciliatory steps towards the adversaries of Mughals, but he never abolished jizya tax. It was under Jahandar Shah with the blessings of Zulfikar Khan that jizya tax was abolished. Now this jizya tax is a religious tax where it is imposed on non-Muslims living under a Muslim controlled territory. So this jizya tax was reintroduced by Aurangzeb. It was waived off, it was abolished by Akbar, and it stayed abolished for a period of time, and Aurangzeb reintroduced this jizya. After Aurangzeb reintroduced, it stayed on during the time of his son Bahadur Shah I, and after Jahandar Shah comes to the throne, it is once again abolished. So that is the story of this. So the second statement is not correct. The answer is A, 1 only for the third question. Moving on, consider the following statements. Ijara system, the concept of revenue farming was the invention of Todarmal. Second, the area sown, types of crops cultivated, and the revenue share was duly written on a paper under the Ijara system, they say. Now, Ijara system is a concept of revenue farming. Now, what is this revenue farming? Revenue farming is a concept where the Mughals will give the land to some middlemen who will in fact split the land into multiple fragments and give it to the peasants. The middleman will collect the revenue from the peasants and give the money to the Mughal treasury. This system is Ijara system, and here is where the Jagirdars were appointed. This Ijara system was introduced under Zulfikar Khan, not Todarmal. In fact, Todarmal worked under Sher Shah Suri as well as under Akbar. Todarmal designed a way of collecting farm revenue in such an exquisite manner that every peasant loved the system, where the average output of the agricultural fields were calculated, and based on that average and based on the requirement of the state, the accurate amount of revenue that needs to be collected was calculated, and based on that revenue was appropriated. That was a very fair and just system which was highly appreciated by the peasants. That came under Todarmal. Ijara system, it is a concept where you employ a middleman to collect the revenue, and this middleman often engaged in very, very cruel practices, and it was despised by the peasants. So the first statement is wrong. The second statement, the area sown, types of crops cultivated, and the revenue share was duly written on a paper under the Ijara system, they say this is also wrong, because it was written under Patta system. Patta system was introduced by Sher Shah. This Ijara system, the Ijara system does not involve anything like this. So the second statement is also wrong. The answer is neither 1 nor 2, option D. This is the answer for the fourth question. Moving on, which among the following steps were made during the time of Jahandar Shah? First, abolishing of jizya, which I told actually happened, this is correct. Established friendly relations with the Rajputs, this is also correct. He tried to give huge titles for the Rajput kings to appease them, so that the Mughal influence and the Mughal power is not questioned by any of them. And the third statement is established friendly relations with the Sikhs. Well, this is not correct, because by this time Banda Bahadur, who came after the last Sikh Guru, died, and this Banda Bahadur was having so many problems with the Mughal authority, and there were frequent skirmishes from both sides. So the friendly relations with the Sikhs, it was not practiced, but the other two statements are correct. The answer is option B, 1 and 2 only. This is the answer for the 5th question. Sixth question. Consider the following statements. Syed brothers helped Farrukshir to ascend the throne. This statement is correct. Farrukshir succeeded Jahandar Shah, and he was able to succeed only with the help of Syed brothers. Syed brothers helped Muhammad Shah Rangila to ascend to the throne. They say Muhammad Shah is a successor, one of the successors of Farrukshir, and Muhammad Shah was also helped by Syed brothers. The second statement is also true. When Farrukshir was protesting against the power of the Syed brothers felt that they need to end the life of the Mughal emperor and install someone else who will listen to what the brothers are saying, and that's why they in fact killed Farrukshir by conspiracy and installed Muhammad Shah, who is fondly known as Muhammad Shah Rangila, onto the throne. So the second statement is also correct. Third, Syed brothers followed a policy of religious tolerance. This is also correct. They understood that you cannot rule India by having so many enemies, especially in communal lines. So it is better to embrace people of other faith and appoint them in important offices and take their service rather than getting into conflict with all of them. So they in fact embraced good relations with people belonging to other faith. So the third statement is also correct. The answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Question number 7. Consider the following statements. Saadat Ali Khan ruled over Bengal. Murshid Quli Khan ruled over Awadh. Chin Kulich Khan ruled over Hyderabad. Which of the following statements are correct? They are asking. Well, the first two, they are not correct. Why? Because this Bengal and Awadh, they are swapped. Saadat Ali Khan, also known as Burhan ul Mulk, ruled over Awadh, and Murshid Quli Khan ruled over Bengal. Chin Kulich Khan, also known as the Nizam ul Mulk, he ruled over Hyderabad. The third statement is correct. The answer is option C, 3 only. Next, we will go to the 8th question and arrange the following in chronological order, they say. Now, these kinds of questions appear in UPSC quite often. We will try to understand how we have to do this. It is easy to say that we have to remember the years in which these events happened, but if you just remember which happened before, that much is good enough. You don't have to remember the exact year. For example, in these 4 events or incidents that has been given, we will try to understand which happened first. Third Battle of Panipat is there, Battle of Plassey is there, Battle of Karnal is there, Farrukshir granting trade privileges to East India Company is there. Of this, Farrukshir giving trade privileges is the first event, and after this came the Battle of Karnal, and after that came the Battle of Plassey, and then finally the third Battle of Panipat. The answer is 4-3-2-1 only. 4-3-2-1 is option A. Option A is the answer, and we have an explanation for this. So in 1717, Farrukshir granted the trade privileges. 1739, the Battle of Karnal between Nadir Shah and Muhammad Shah, and then in 1757, Plassey between Siraj ud Dawla and the East India Company headed by Robert Clive, and then 1761, the third Battle of Panipat between the Marathas and the Afghans headed by Ahmad Shah Abdali. Ninth question. Consider the following statements. Khalisa lands compose of the region in Punjab which belonged to the Sikhs as asserted by Banda Bahadur. Takkavi was an agricultural loan granted to poor cultivators under Murshid Quli Khan. Now Murshid Quli Khan ruled over Bengal, we know, and it is a fact that Takkavi loan was given to poor peasants under Murshid Quli Khan. In fact, after the death of Aurangzeb, Bengal is one of the provinces which was very highly flourishing even after the last great Mughal ruler died, which is Aurangzeb, under such able administrators like Murshid Quli Khan, Alivardi Khan, Sirajud-Dawla and others. So this Takkavi loan, the second statement, that is correct. The first statement is wrong. So this Kalisha lands are lands which are directly controlled by the Mughals, and in those lands that revenue farming, that Ijara system was being implemented. So that is the definition of Khalisa land, land which is centrally controlled by the Mughals where Ijara farming is practiced. So if the question is about which of the above statements are correct, then the answer is option B, 2 only. Moving on, consider the following statements regarding blue water policy. Blue water policy was introduced by Alfonso de Albuquerque, they say. Well, this statement is wrong. It was introduced by Almeida. Blue water policy opposes the establishment of a territorial empire in India. This statement is correct. Blue water policy aimed to maintain Portuguese supremacy on sea and confine their activities to purely commercial transactions. That statement is also correct. See, Almeida is one of the governors, Portuguese governors, who was present in India, and he was of the opinion that if you are able to control the navy, if you are able to control the sea around India, then you will be able to control the entire Indian country completely. So he was in fact against any territorial ambition because he thought that we do not have enough number of Portuguese to control any territorial forts which we have probably captured. So we should not be having any territorial ambitions, we should rather try to focus entirely on commercial ambitions where we will expand our navy and control the seas. So that is the blue water policy. So in this question, the first statement is wrong, 2 and 3 are correct. The answer is option C, 2 and 3 only. That is the answer for the 10th question. Next, we will go to the 11th question. Consider the following statements. Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, a contemporary of the Mughal ruler Humayun, came into conflict with the Portuguese and was killed in the time of Alfonso de Albuquerque. Well, this statement is factually wrong. He was killed under the governorship of Nunoda Cunha or Ninoda Cunha, not Alfonso de Albuquerque. Alfonso de Albuquerque encouraged Portuguese men to marry local women. That is correct. See, after Almeida, who focused on blue water policy and not trying to establish any territorial any territorial Portuguese presence in India, the next governor who came to India was this Albuquerque, and he was of the opinion that no, we have to go and expand in terms of territory, and he went around trying to capture as much land as possible and trying to take as many local wives as possible. He wanted to change the local demography into Portuguese speaking, Christian majority, and he wanted to change the nature of the administration present in the regions that the Portuguese occupied. So that was the ultimate aim of Albuquerque. So the second statement is correct. The first statement is wrong because this Nunoda Cunha or Ninoda Cunha, he came after Albuquerque, and it was under him that the ruler of Gujarat, Bahadur Shah, this Bahadur Shah is different from the Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah I So please don't confuse. This Bahadur Shah was the ruler of Gujarat and he was assassinated under the Portuguese watch when it was governed by Nunoda Kunha. So for the 11th question, the answer is option B, 2 only. Twelfth question. Arrange the following in chronological order, they say. Bartholomew Dias went around the Cape of Good Hope and sailed up the east coast of Africa. Second, Nunoda Kunha shifted the headquarters of the Portuguese government in India from Cochin to Goa. Francisco de Almeida came to India as the new governor. Alfonso de Albuquerque established bases overlooking all the entrances to the sea. Now, Bartholomew Dias is the person who actually found a way, a sea route to India before Vasco da Gama, though he never really reached India. He travelled all around Africa through the Cape of Good Hope and he was able to travel alongside the east coast of Africa, and where he was informed that there is a path towards India from the east coast of Africa. After 10 years after the journey taken by this Bartholomew Dias, Vasco da Gama came to India. So in all the events which are mentioned here, the first event is of course the first statement only, that is the first event. Of the remaining 3, all you have to do is just arrange the chronology as per which governor came first and which came next. Of these 3, Almeida came first and then came Albuquerque and then came Kunha. So the answer is 1, statement 1 and then statement 3 and then statement 4 and then statement 2. 1, 3, 4, 2. This is the answer, which is option C. So for the 12th question, the answer is option C. We have a set of explanation given. So you can pause the video to watch this explanation as to what is given here, and also you would be given the explanation sheet along with the results of your performance for the test. So please go through that. Moving on. Yeah, 13th question. So, which of the following are the reasons for the decline of Portuguese in India? 1. Rise of Mughals. Yes, the Portuguese came to India before Babur came to India, and as the Mughals were rising, they were unable to compete with the local rulers. That is in fact one of the reasons for their decline. Rise of Marathas. Absolutely correct. The Marathas were rising over a period of time, and under the siege, multiple sieges by the Marathas, they were unable to do business or to perform their administration. That was also a problem. Cruel religious practices. That is also correct. They conducted certain things called as Inquisition. Goa Inquisition is a very infamous incident where people who recently converted to Christianity from some other religion or non-Christians were tortured and abused by the Catholic representatives of the Portuguese administration, and this led to a lot of resentment in the minds of the people against the Portuguese. So that is also one of the reasons for their decline. Then the discovery of Brazil. Absolutely correct. Brazil was discovered by the Portuguese around the end period of their stay in India, and because of this they shifted their focus from India to Brazil, and later on they completely vacated India and played only a small subjugated part in the Indian administration alongside the British and the French, whoever was remaining in India. So that these are the 4 reasons for the decline of the Portuguese in India, and of course the answer for this question is option D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Question number 14. Consider the following statements. After the disintegration of Mughals, the newly formed states were invariably secular and non-communal in nature, and they did not discriminate against Hindus in public appointment. This statement is absolutely correct. After the Mughals started fragmenting, provinces like Hyderabad, Bengal, Awadh, they were all getting stronger, and as they were getting stronger, they were highly secular in nature. They gave important offices to high-ranking Hindu individuals and people of other faiths as well. So, the first statement is correct. None of these post-Mughal states succeeded in arresting the prevailing economic crisis. That part is correct. Even though they tried to modernize the basic industrial and commercial structure of their states, that part is wrong. So, the first part seems correct, where none of them were unable to end the economic crisis that is happening, while they all tried to encourage trade, internal trade as well as external trade. They never took the initiative to modernize the basic industrial and commercial structure of their states. In fact, had they done it, then the economic crisis would have been averted. Since they did not do it, they were not able to arrest the economic crisis. So, on the whole, the second statement is wrong. So, for the 14th question, the answer is A, 1 only. Fifteenth question. Again, chronological arrangement. Black Hole of Calcutta, Treaty of Srirangapatnam, Treaty of Salbai, and Siege of Srirangapatnam. Now, the Black Hole of Calcutta, it is around the conquest of Bengal. So, there is a good chance that this will be the first. Then comes the Treaty of Srirangapatnam. This Treaty of Srirangapatnam was written much later, I think after the third Anglo-Maratha War, Anglo-Mysore War. The Treaty of Salbai, this came before this, and this Treaty of Salbai was between the English and the Marathas. If I am right, it is from the first Anglo-Maratha War, and it was concluded with the Treaty of Salbai. And then the Siege of Srirangapatnam. The Siege of Srirangapatnam marks the end of the Mysorean Empire as controlled by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. So, that marks the last. So, this is certainly the fourth. And in these four events, we notice that these third statements is actually the second event, and the Treaty of Srirangapatnam is the third event. The answer will be 1, 3, 2 and 4. Sorry. The answer will be 1, 3, 2 and 4, option D. Here is the explanation for that, where you have to remember which event, which conquest happened before which, even if you don't remember the years where the conquest actually happened. So, please pause the video and have a look at this explanation. Moving on, the next, arranging the chronological order. Now, here they say this Battle of Vandivash, Treaty of Ryswick, Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle and Treaty of Peace of Paris. All of this are related to the Carnatic Wars. The answer is, you will remember this answer only if you remember the sequence of events leading to each and every Carnatic War. See, the first is actually the Treaty of Ryswick. Treaty of Ryswick by itself is not regarding Carnatic Wars. It is the rivalry between the Dutch and the French. The Dutch had managed to capture Pondicherry and they were holding on to Pondicherry without giving it back to the French. Finally, after this Treaty of Ryswick, Ryswick is a town in Netherlands, the Dutch area, and after this treaty, the Dutch agreed to hand over Pondicherry back to the French. So that is the Treaty of Ryswick. This happened before all the Carnatic Wars started in 1697 itself. Then comes the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. Now, Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed to mark the end of the Austrian War of Succession. There was a war of succession going on in Austria that was going on from 1740 to 1748. So, in 1748, after a period of 8 years, the Austrian War of Succession was ended, and in this Austrian War of Succession, the British took one side and the French took the other side, and therefore, this resulted in a conflict between the British and the French that resulted in the First Carnatic War. And with the end of this Austrian War of Succession, with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, the First Carnatic War was also brought to an end. So that is the second event. Then comes the Battle of Vandewash. Now this Battle of Vandewash, it is actually fought between the British and the French in the Third Carnatic War. In the Third Carnatic War, you notice that the French and the English were fighting a 7 years war back in Europe. So for that, they were also having a fight over in the Indian subcontinent. So in this battle, the Battle of Vandewash, the French was completely decimated, and that ended the French supremacy or French ambitions in India. So this Battle of Vandewash comes third. And finally, the Treaty of Peace of Paris. It is this Treaty of Peace of Paris which ended the Third Carnatic War, wherein which the French accepted that they will play a subsidiary role to the British in India and they will not have any ambitious plans in India. So this is the sequence of arrangement. Seventeenth question. Who is considered as the real founder of the Portuguese in India in the East? Portuguese in the East. Well, when they say Portuguese in the East, you should know that Portuguese had colonies in the East and in the West. In the East, they had colonies in India and many parts of Southeast Asia and Africa. In the West, they had colonies in South America, they had colonies in Caribbean, in Central America and some parts of North America. So, the person who is considered as the real founder of the Portuguese in the East, that person will be the person who asked for territorial expansion in India. So, it cannot be Almeida, it is not Vasco da Gama, who was simply a trader, and Nino da Cunha came very last, it is not him. The answer has to be Alfonso de Albuquerque. So the answer for the 17th question is option D. 18th question. Consider the following statements with regards to the reasons why the Europeans wanted a sea route to India. Statement 1. Ottoman Turks controlled Constantinople and thereby controlled the land route to India. Statement 2. Europe was gripped by the spirit of the Renaissance with its call for adventure and exploration. Statement 3. Europe made great advances in the art of shipbuilding and navigation. All three statements are correct. The answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Question number 19. Which of the following are correctly matched? We have to isolate the ones which are correctly matched. 1. First factory for the British at Surat, they say this is correct. This was granted under Jahangir. Jahangir granted the British to construct a factory and run a factory in Surat. Second, Francis Day with Fort William. Well, Fort William is in Calcutta, and this Fort William was not related to Francis Day, it was related to Charles Eyre. So, the second statement is wrong, even though the first statement is correct. Fort St. George is the first British fortress in India, they are saying. This is correct. Fort St. George is located in Madras, in the British province of Madras. And Francis Day, in fact, was instrumental in the creation of Fort St. George. The answer is 1 and 3 only, option C. Question number 20. Consider the following statements with regards to the significance of the Carnatic Wars. The Battle of Vandewash ensured the elimination of all European rivals for the British in India. This is correct. The last remaining rival for European rivals for the British in India was the French, and with the Battle of Vandewash, the French were completely decimated and they were unable to regain their strength after this war. So, that ensured the supremacy of the British in India. That is correct. Second statement, it revealed that even a small disciplined army led by the Europeans could easily defeat a much larger Indian army. That is also correct. The French and the British, they were fighting proxy wars of Europe in India in the first and third Carnatic Wars, and then they were even fighting proxy wars of Indians in India, where when there is a dynastic dispute, a war of succession in a particular kingdom, in a particular territory, the French is going to take one side and the British are going to take the other side. And these local dynastic disputes also became a front for the French and the British to clash. And in the second Carnatic War, under Dupleix, the French were able to win over several Indian kings, and one of the lessons that they learnt was that the large Indian army is not necessarily very formidable in the face of a very well trained small infantry, a small army of the French. So, that statement is also correct. The answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Then question number 21. Arrange the following in chronological order. So, once again we have a question where we are going to arrange the sequence of events. We will look at these events and we will look at them in detail. The first comes the Austrian War of Succession. The answer is A4132, with the first being the Austrian War of Succession. The French-British rivalry, the Anglo-French rivalry, initially was introduced in India because of the Austrian War of Succession. In the Austrian War of Succession, the French and the British, they decided to side with different kings as the successors for the Austrian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire. And that Austrian War of Succession spilled over into India and caused the first Carnatic War. So, this Austrian War of Succession is the first event in the given list. The next will be the Battle of Ambur. Now, this Battle of Ambur was fought as a part of the second Carnatic War. As I mentioned in the previous questions, the second Carnatic War was fought between the French and the British as a proxy war in deciding the successor for the local kingdoms. The French and the British not only engaged in proxy wars outside not engaged in proxy wars outside of their own territories in Britain and France, in Austria, in Europe, but also in their colonies, where local kings were also made pawns in their war, in their rivalry. So, the Battle of Ambur comes second, and the first Anglo-Maratha War, well, there is a huge gap between the Carnatic Wars and the Anglo-Maratha War, the first Anglo-Maratha War. Obviously, that will come next. And the first Anglo-Maratha War, I think I mentioned earlier, it ended with the Treaty of Salbai. So that is there. And then the second Anglo-Mysore War. You notice that the first Anglo-Maratha War and the second Anglo-Mysore War almost overlaps. The Anglo-Maratha War starts a little earlier than the Anglo-Mysore War. So in chronology, you have to give Anglo-Maratha War first and then you have to give Anglo-Mysore War. So this was deliberately given to ensure that you are alert in trying to arrange the orders in a very, very accurate fashion. So this is the chronological sequence of events. Moving on to the next question, question number 22. Which among the following statements is or are not correct, they are asking, with regards to the reasons for the success of British in India? The British, unlike the French, focused more on territorial ambition and this helped them to secure more funds. Well, this is not correct. The British focused on trade. The French focused on territorial expansion. So the first statement is not correct, certainly. The second statement, the British Navy helped to cut off the vital sea link between the French possessions in India and France. That is correct. During the Carnatic Wars, the British Navy managed to cut off the supplies and the communication links between mainland France and French colonies in India, and thereby they were able to get some strategic advantage. So the second statement is correct, the first statement is wrong. The question is which is not correct. So the answer has to be A1 only. That is the answer for question number 22. Question number 23. Consider the following statements. The system of drilling groups of infantries was introduced by the British, they say. The first statement is wrong. It was introduced by Portuguese. The Marathas and the Sikhs adopted the system of drilling groups of infantries. That is correct. See, the system of drilling group of infantries means there is a certain amount of discipline incorporated in the fields where the troops move in strategic positions, they move in a strategic manner, and everybody in a particular regiment, in a particular battalion will listen to what the commander is saying and they will do whatever the commander is saying. This military discipline is called as this system of drilling groups of infantries. This was introduced by the Portuguese, it was adopted by the Marathas, it was adopted by the Sikhs, it was also adopted by the British and the Dutch from the Portuguese. So in this question, the answer is option B, 2 only. That is the answer for the question number 23. Question number 24. Mir Jafar gave the entire Diwani and Nizamat rights of the Bengal province to the British, they say. That statement is wrong because Mir Jafar died when this rights of Diwani and Nizamat are given to the British. See, Diwani means right to collect land revenue. Nizamat means right to have security, meaning controlling the police and the military. So this Diwani and Nizamat rights, giving it to the British, that was given to them under the system of dual administration. This dual administration was brought not under Mir Jafar but under his son Nizam-ud-Dawla. So Nizam-ud-Dawla gave these rights to the British. So this is a factual question, please understand the difference. Then Mir Jafar gave the right to free trade in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha to the British. This statement is correct. This was given after the Battle of Plassey. So, the first statement is wrong, second statement is correct. The answer is option B, 2 only. That is the answer for question number 24. Question number 25. Policy of proud reserve is concerned with which of the following? British annexation of Sindh? No, that is not the answer. Anglo-Afghan relations? Yes, that is correct. Anglo-French? No. Robert Clive's policy in dealing with Nawab of Bengal after the Black Hole tragedy? Nope. The answer is Anglo-Afghan relations. It was introduced by Lytton. Lytton brought in this policy where he wanted to have scientific barriers. He wanted to have spheres of influences around the British possessions, and he thought that the question of Afghanistan as to who is it under the influence of cannot be left unanswered for a long time. So, he wanted to engage in a policy where Afghanistan was brought under the influence of the British. So, that is the policy of proud reserve. So, the answer is option B, Anglo-Afghan relations. Moving on, consider the following statements. The British annexed Sindh to create a land barrier to prevent Russians entering into India. This statement is correct. The first Anglo-Sikh war was caused due to violation of the treaties signed between the British and Ranjit Singh, Raja Ranjit Singh. That statement is also correct. Raja Ranjit Singh and the British had actually signed several treaties, and one of the provisions in those treaties is that the Sikh army will not cross the river Sutlej, and if it crosses, it is going to invade. It will be considered as an act of aggression against the British territory, which is on the other side of the Sutlej river. So, having signed that treaty under Ranjit Singh, after the death of Ranjit Singh, when the Sikhs crossed the Sutlej river, that led to the first Anglo-Sikh war. The second statement is correct. The first is also correct. And for the question number 26, the answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Question number 27. Which of the following are the economic impacts of the British rule in India? Stagnation and deterioration of agriculture. That is correct. Agriculture did not develop a lot. It was stagnating. There was no new technique, there was no scientific improvement in the way how agriculture was practiced. So, the first statement is correct. There was a lot of pressure on the land because of so many people moving from handicraft industry back to agriculture. So, that is there. The second statement is commercialization of Indian agriculture. That statement is also correct. While agriculture by itself was stagnant, commercialization increased, meaning plantations were done and the growing of cash crops happened under the British. Cash crops are crops which gives a lot of profit, but it is not really necessary or not really needed for consumption. So, grains, food grains and cereals were not cultivated in a large extent under the British, and most of the lands under the cultivation which was previously cultivating food grains, those lands were brought under the cultivation of cash crops like cashew nuts, indigo and other crops. So, this commercialization of agriculture also happened under the British rule, and it was in fact an economic impact. The rise of Indian middle class is also correct. See, when the government is expanding, there is so many positions opening in the government, and because of that so many people got appointed in the government offices, even though all those appointments were in the subordinate level only, where Indians were made to do only very menial jobs and very clerical tasks, which does not involve much of decision making. So those jobs were found in large numbers under the British administration, and people who got employed in those jobs were able to draw a steady salary, and this in turn led to the increase in the number of middle class in India. So all three statements are correct. The answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. What is meant by Imperial Preferences? These were the special privileges given to imports from Britain. That in fact is the right answer. See, Britain considered India as a market, the colonial Britain, and they managed to squeeze in as much finished goods from Britain into India as possible. These special privileges known as Imperial Preferences were given to those imports from Britain so that they are easily available in the Indian market. That is the answer. The other options were special preferences given to white people in all public places. No. Seats reserved in the government jobs only for English people. No. They were special privileges given to English students in the school. No. All these are unsubstantiated statements, though the actions itself may sometimes have actually happened, where white people were given more privileges than non-white or Indian people. So those things happened, but they did not have an official name for it, like Imperial Preferences. The answer is option A. 29. Which of the following are correctly matched? Rayatwari, Mahalwari and Zamindari. 3 land revenue systems, and let's see which are correctly matched. Rayatwari, a group of villages were assigned the responsibility to collect revenue. No, that is wrong. Mahalwari, an individual farmer was considered as the owner of his land and taxes were collected directly from them. That is also wrong. See, Rayatwari and Mahalwari is there. These definitions are correct, except that it was swapped. The Rayatwari, under the Rayatwari system, the individual farmer is considered as the owner of the land and taxes were directly appropriated from the individual peasant. That is under Rayatwari. Under Mahalwari, there was a collective responsibility where groups of villages will pay their land revenue together. Even though the cultivation is an individual's responsibility, the payment of revenue, that is a collective responsibility. That is under Mahalwari. Then the third, Zamindari. The land revenue was fixed for a period of 10 years. This is correct. Under the Zamindari system, also known as the permanent land revenue system, though it is called as permanent, the tenure which was fixed was that of 10 years only. For 10 years, there will not be any change in the way how taxes were collected. So, in these 3 land revenue settlements, you have to know something. The Zamindari system was implemented the first. The Rayatwari system came second. Mahalwari came last. Meaning, I am just telling that the system of revenue was implemented in different time periods, one after the other. So, please remember that for this question, the answer is option C, 3 only. Now, question number 30. Which of the following was or were the factor or factors which led to the enactment of the Regulating Act of 1773? The first, the neglect and deterioration of the people of Bengal due to the dual government which was implemented in 1765. This is correct. The dual government was a system where, to put it in very simplistic terms, the British had all the authority while the Nawab of Bengal had all the responsibility without any authority. The British had all the authority without any responsibility. This led to the deterioration of administration, and there was large scale wide corruption and the people of Bengal lost their livelihood. They were completely in a very pathetic and miserable state. This in fact was one of the reasons which triggered the implementation of this Regulating Act of 1773. Second, lack of supervision which led to the rise of corruption among the company servants. It is correct, as I just mentioned. Because of this dual government setup, the company officials were emboldened to act in very nefarious ways, and that led to large scale corruptions, and the British government also wanted to curb this corruption. Therefore, they brought in provisions which increased the transparency of the actions of the East India Company through this Regulating Act of 1773. To stop the rapid industrialization of India. Well, that statement is not necessarily correct, because see, to stop the rapid industrialization of India means in some way industrialization has been going on, and in order to stop this Regulating Act was passed, they are saying. That's what it's implying, but that's not correct. Industrialization had not happened in India as it was happening in Britain. So the third statement is unsubstantiated. The Britishers prevented any industrialization of India, and they never encouraged industrialization of India in the large run, in the large scheme of things. But this Regulating Act of 1773 has nothing to do with that policy. So for the 30th question, since we are asked to select the correct answer, the answer will be option B, 1 and 2 only. (31) Consider the following statements regarding Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings abolished the system of dastaks or free passes. That is correct. Sorry. He abolished the dastak system. See, dastaks are trade privileges given, or should I say transit privileges, where when goods are being transported from one place to another, if they have this dastak, a pass, they can show this dastak and they can exempt themselves, their goods, from paying any taxes. This dastak system was given to the company by the local rulers to encourage trade, but the company servants, for their private trade, they started using dastaks, and they started having very unfair trade policies with the local native Indian merchants. So it created a lot of unrest amongst the Indians, between the Indians and the British, and it also led to a large scale corruption in the British officials. Therefore, the British government and Warren Hastings himself decided to abolish this dastaks completely. So dastak system was abolished by Warren Hastings, that is correct. He abolished the system of dual government in 1772, that is also correct. Dual government was not really working very well, so it was decided to do away with this dual government setup, and Warren Hastings was the one who ended this dual government. He initiated the policy of subsidiary alliance. No, that is not correct. Subsidiary alliance policy was popularized by Lord Wellesley and not Warren Hastings. This concept of subsidiary alliance was actually envisioned or in some way practiced by Dupleix, the French governor who handled the first two Carnatic wars against the British. Subsidiary alliance is a policy where the British will maintain the Indian troops as well as their troops, and the Indian kingdoms will completely hand over the responsibility of security to the British. They will not conduct any foreign policy without consulting the British, and one British resident will always be placed in their court. To give back to the British, to remunerate the British for the services that they are rendering, the Indian kingdoms are supposed to pay the British for maintenance of the troops. This arrangement is called a subsidiary alliance. This subsidiary alliance was popularized by Wellesley. So it was not under Warren Hastings. The third statement is wrong. The answer is option B, 1 and 2 only. Question number 32. Consider the following statements regarding Lord Cornwallis. Now Cornwallis, it says he introduced civil services and the state sanctioned police system in India. That is correct. Second, the first Anglo-Maratha War was fought under his oversight. They are saying that is wrong. Cornwallis introduced civil services in India. He created the civil services bureaucracy and he also created the police system in India. Cornwallis also regularized the army and he regularized administration, British administration in India. First statement is correct. The second statement, that is not correct because the first Anglo-Maratha War was fought under Warren Hastings, under the command of Warren Hastings and not Cornwallis. Under Cornwallis, the third Anglo-Mysore War, that was fought under the command of Lord Cornwallis. So the second statement is wrong, the first statement is correct. The answer is option A, one only. Question number 33. Which of the following statements is or are true about the role of Christian missionaries in British India? Statement 1. They were officially allowed to preach and convert in India after the Charter Act of 1833. That statement is wrong. It was allowed after the Charter Act of 1813. Now, years by itself is not important, but there is a significant group of developments which happened after the 1813 Charter Act, and then there is another Charter Act of 1833, and then there is the Charter Act of 1853. So, between these three, you should be able to understand which provision was brought under which Charter Act. That is important. So, Christian missionaries were allowed to enter into preach. European Christian missionaries were allowed to enter into India and preach Christianity after the Charter Act of 1813 was passed. In the second statement, they advocated for the abolition of sati and legalizing of widow remarriage. That statement is correct. See, the Christian missionaries often try to point to the evils present in the local traditions and customs, and they pointed to sati and the cruel treatment of widows to say that Hinduism is a very, very evil and a bad religion. This was the strategy taken by the European Christian missionaries who came to India after this Charter Act was passed. Christianity has been in India for a long time and Christians have been present in India and peacefully coexisting. But the Christian missionaries who came with the agenda of converting the Indian subcontinent into Christianity and to change the way of the way of life and culture in India, they actually tried to legally take as many measures as possible to subdue the local traditions, and the second statement is in fact correct because of that. So the answer for the 33rd question will be option B, 2 only. (34) With reference to the reign of Bahadur Shah, consider the following statements. This is the same Bahadur Shah who succeeded Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb's son Bahadur Shah I. Bahadur Shah granted the Maratha chiefs the right to collect Sardeshmukhi and Chawat. They are saying this statement is wrong because he had a half-hearted policy towards the Marathas and he decided to grant them this Sardeshmukhi rights but not the Chawat. See, Chawat and Sardeshmukhi are two different taxes which the Marathas levied on the people within their territory and just outside their territory. The Chawat was imposed on the people living under the Maratha territory. Sardeshmukhi was imposed on the territories lying outside of the Maratha territories, and this Sardeshmukhi was a security tax which the neighboring states has to pay, the neighboring peasants had to pay, so that the Marathas will not invade their territory. That is Sardeshmukhi. Now, when Bahadur Shah, when he wanted to reconcile with the Marathas after the death of Aurangzeb, he decided to give them the rights to collect Sardeshmukhi even in Mughal lands, but Chauvat he did not give. There were many territories claimed by the Marathas, and these territories were in dispute between the Marathas and the Mughals. The Mughal ruler allowed the collection of Sardeshmukhi, but not Chauvat. The second statement is, he tried to conciliate the rebellious Sikhs by giving Guru Gobind Singh a high mansab. That is actually correct. So, once he got to the throne, he wanted to appease all the Mughal adversaries and neighbors. So, he took many reconciliatory steps, of which trying to reconcile with the Sikhs was also a major step in that. And so, the second statement is correct. The first statement is wrong. The answer for this question is option B, 2 only. In what ways did the British conquest of India differ or differs from all previous conquests? We have already seen this in the class. Let us see what is given in these statements. They changed the very nature of the Indian economy. That is correct. The Indian economy used to be very self-sufficient, and they managed to change the very nature of the Indian economy by making it dependent on the British economy and on the British manufacturers and merchants. They transformed the Indian economy into a colonial economy. So, that is correct. They mainly exploited Muslims rather than Hindus and favored Christians. No, that statement is wrong. See, the British, they exploited the locals irrespective of their faith or community or caste or creed. They certainly favored Christians, but it was implicitly done, and the policy of divide and rule used by the British to ensure that the Hindus and the Muslims are constantly in conflict with each other came after the revolt of 1857. After the revolt of 1857, at one particular point they favored the Hindus and they started subjugating and suppressing the Muslims. That is correct. And when nationalism in India grew, then they started favoring the Muslims and started subjugating and suppressing the Hindu ideas. So, like this, they have always posed Hindus and Muslims against each other, and that happened, but that came very, very late. In this particular context, in the way that the British conquest itself, it differs from the previous conquest, well, they did not exploit based on communal lines originally. So, the second statement is wrong, the first statement is correct. The answer is option A, 1 only. Question number 36. Which of the following statements is or are not correct? First, the Macaulay education system proposed the education of a few upper and middle class students only. That statement is correct. This policy of trying to educate only a few upper and middle class students only and expecting them to educate the people below these upper and middle class sections of the society, this policy is called as downward filtration policy, or this theory is called as downward filtration theory. So, that was proposed by Macaulay, this is correct. Second, Macaulay headed the first law commission as per the Charter Act of 1853. That is wrong, it is not 1853, it is 1833. Once again, the year is not important, but only in the Charter Act of 1833 laws were codified in India, and I have mentioned this in the class. Codification of laws happened under the Charter Act of 1833, and under the Charter of 1833 this law commission was formed, and here also Macaulay was the head of the law commission, and he ensured that the Indian laws were codified, and he was the first chairperson of the law commission of India. So, that is there. Second statement is wrong. Third, the Indian Penal Code was applicable to all parts of British India including the princely states. No, that is wrong. The IPC, the Indian Penal Code, which was codified, that was applicable only to the British India, only to the British provinces, not to the princely states. So the third statement is wrong. The question is about which of the following statements is or not correct. So the answer will be option C, 2 and 3 only. Moving on to question number 37. Which of the following statements is or not correct, they are saying. First, under Lord Macaulay, the Indian civil services was moved from patronage based system to merit based system. That statement is correct. The question is which are not correct. So one should not be in the answer. See, under Lord Macaulay, he was engaged in reforming the Indian education system. He was engaged in the codification of Indian laws. He was also engaged in the reformation of administration, where in fact he was the one who proposed that instead of recruiting civil servants to India based on the recommendations of governors and other British politicians, high ranking British officials, we should have an open examination where we take servants based on merit. That was suggested by Lord Macaulay, and that statement is correct. Second statement, the first engineering college established in India was University of Roorkee. That statement is correct. It is this University of Roorkee. Today we call it as IIT Roorkee. And third, the Orientalists supported scientific education. That statement is wrong. See, the Orientalists are people who were very open-minded towards the Indian culture, towards the Indian knowledge, Indian philosophy, and they encouraged the Indians to follow the Indian culture. They did not impose any ideas of scientific education to Indians. So the third statement is wrong. The scientific education was imposed by radicals. Radicals are groups of British ideologies, where we actually divide the British ideology groups into three groups. One is the conservatives, who are also composed of these Orientalists. Then the second comprise of paternalistic imperialists, who try to justify imperialism and colonialism because they say that Britain has the obligation to culture the locals. That is the second group of British ideology. Then the third group is about radicals, who say that human progress should happen and Indian society has to progress by any means, and therefore we have to ensure that radical scientific and progressive knowledge is incorporated in the heads of Indian people. That was supported by the radical group. The Orientalists, also the conservatives, also known as conservatives, they did not say scientific education. It was the radicals who said that. So the third statement is wrong. The first two statements are correct. The question is about which is not correct. So the answer is option C, 3 only. (38) Who among the following supported the revolt of 1857? Money lenders? Well, no, they did not support. Money lenders were favoring the British. Priests, they supported. They supported because they felt that the Christian missionaries are committing so many atrocities against the Hindus, and the priests certainly supported the revolt against the British and the British policies. Evicted zamindars, that is correct. Many zamindars were thrown out of their lands because they failed to pay the rent on time to the British government. So many such zamindars who were thrown out, they also joined along with the mutineers and they supported the revolt of 1857. But you should know, the vast majority of the zamindars, they did not take part in the revolt of 1857 because they understood that their position in the society is guaranteed only by the British. So they did not want to go against the British at all. So the evicted zamindars supported. Modern educated Indians, they did not support. See, education has been brought into India since the Charter Act of 1813 itself. Some form of education, modern education, has been introduced in India. Later on it underwent evolution, but from 1813 till 1857, so many people got educated and most of them stayed away from the revolt of 1857. Why? Because they felt that the British administration, imperial rule is necessary to make sure that the Indian state, the Indian way of life, the Indian culture also progresses. So, with that argument in mind, and also as they were against the very aggressive and violent methods taken by the people who were revolting in this revolt of 1857, they decided not to take part in the revolt of 1857 and they did not support it. So, for this question, the answer will be 2 and 3 only, option B. Question number 39. Consider the following statements regarding development of railways under British rule. So, this is regarding the very nature of the development of railways in India. 1. It ushered a commercial revolution benefiting Britain and not the industrial revolution in India. Well, that statement is correct. Railways were developed to encourage British exports, and it is essentially what that did. It actually encouraged that the Britishers were able to export a lot of goods from Britain, and it was received in the Indian ports, from where through railways the goods were transported to different parts of the Indian territory. That was there. The railways were developed in such a way that it favored imports and exports and discouraged internal movement of goods, they are saying. That statement is also correct. Imports and exports. Import of finished goods, exports of raw materials from India to Britain was favored. Internal movement of Indian made goods, that was discouraged. So, the second statement is also correct. The answer for this question will be option C, both 1 and 2. Question number 40. Lex Loci Act passed by the British in 1850 was about which of the following? Option A, it gave the right to inherit ancestral property to Hindu women. No, that is not correct. It gave the right to inherit ancestral property to Hindus who converted to Christianity. That is correct. See, as per Hindu laws and traditions, when a Hindu converts from one religion, from Hinduism to some other religion, that particular Hindu loses the right over the ancestral property. But through this Lex Loci Act, the British said, if that Hindu converts to Christianity, then he will continue to have the rights to inherit the ancestral property, and this was detested by the Hindus because they felt that this is a communal assault on the Hindus where their own practices are being questioned in favor of Christianity. So, that is what the Lex Loci Act is about. The option is option B only. Option C, it gave legal and justiciable right to inherit property to all Hindus irrespective of their class. No, that is not correct. None of the above is the other option. Of course, that is not correct. The answer is option B. Question number 41. Which of the following was or were reasons behind deindustrializing India by the British? 1. To cater to the needs of a few rich businessmen from India who supported the British policies. No, that seems very a long way around. That is not correct. It is an unsubstantiated statement. 2. To turn India into a sprawling market for Britain's finished products. That is correct. See, had India industrialized itself, it would not be possible for the British to sell British goods in India, where Indian goods will also be able to be present in the market and compete with the British goods. If India was kept deindustrialized, then there is a good chance, there is in fact a lot of chance for the British to use India as a market for their goods, and therefore they deindustrialized India to create India as a market for British goods. The answer is, the second statement is only correct. The answer is option B, 2 only. Question number 42. Consider the following statements regarding the impact of introduction of railways on the Indian economy. First, it fostered commercialization of Indian agriculture, which adversely affected the comparative self-sufficiency of the village economies in India. That statement is correct. See, commercialization of agriculture I told in some previous question, where the growth of cash crops and growing of crops for the sake of profit was encouraged by the British. It was not just encouraged, it was actually forced onto the Indians by the British. So this commercialization of agriculture had happened, and all the raw materials, raw agro products, they were piled on these trains, and using railways they were shipped off to Britain. So the first statement where it says it fostered commercialization of Indian agriculture as an impact of the introduction of railways is correct. There was one more question, 2 questions ago I think, we saw one other question about railways, where that was talking about the very nature of why railways was introduced, and in this question we are talking about the impact of introduction of railways. The second statement is it enabled people to undertake long distance travel and thereby break geographical and cultural barriers. That statement is correct. Because of railways only, people from different parts of India was able to travel to other places, and this inadvertently brought Indians close to each other. So that second statement is correct. Third, it expanded volume of India's exports immensely and helped farmers get a good profit. Well, the first part of the statement is correct. It did expand the volume of India's exports, but these exports were that of raw materials only, not of finished goods. And these exports never helped the farmers get good profit, it helped the East India Company to get good profits. So the third statement is wrong. The answer for this question will be option B, 1 and 2 only. Question number 43. Consider the following statements regarding the trade during the British period in India. Britain had immense trade surplus with India, which it used to balance its trade deficits in other countries. See, Britain had colonies all over the world, it was trading with so many different countries, and they certainly enjoyed a trade surplus with India, where all the British finished goods, British made goods, most of them were dumped in India, and almost no finished goods were exported from India, only raw materials were exported. So obviously they had a very good balance of trade, positive balance of trade. So the first statement is correct, and in fact they used this surplus, whatever profits that they reaped from India, to balance the deficiencies that they had with other trading partners around the world. So wherever they had trade deficiency, balance of trade was in the negative for them, they used this profit taken from India to negate those losses. Second, Britain grew opium in China and exported it to India, and this led to the opium wars between China and the colonial Britain. This statement is actually wrong. In fact, it is the ulta. Britain grew opium in India and exported it to China, and that led to the opium wars. There were 2 opium wars where opium was illegally sold to the Chinese under different guises, and this opium was cultivated in India by the British. So the second statement, by nature of fact, it is wrong. Third, Indian exports of raw cotton increased at a rapid rate. That is correct. The rate of export of raw cotton increased at a rapid rate, and the rate of import of finished cotton textile also increased, the imports from Britain to India. So in this question, the answer is option B, 1 and 3 only. That is the answer for the 43rd question. 44. Consider the following statements regarding the effect of the British rule of old Indian cities. 1. Old trading centers and ports could not survive during the British era and underwent rapid deurbanization. That statement is correct. Trading centers have been existing in India for a long time. When the British came, they actually changed the supply chain mechanism. They changed the nature of economy itself, and this led to the destruction of already existing urban cities, trading cities in India. That statement is correct. New cities sprang up and rose in importance during the British era. That is also correct. Example, Madras, Bombay, Calcutta. All three are new cities which sprang during the time of British and started thriving. Second statement is correct. Machilipatnam or Masulipatnam, Surat and Srirangapatnam were de-urbanized during the 19th century, which means under the British era. That statement is also correct. These are the old Indian cities mentioned in the question, and these old Indian trading cities, very prosperous cities, they were de-urbanized during the British era. So for this question, all three statements are correct. The answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Consider the following statements regarding the Charter Act of 1833. It marks the end of monopoly of East India Company except for its tea trade with China. They are saying that statement is wrong. Why? Because by 1833, by the Charter Act of 1833, it marks the end of monopoly of East India Company, including its tea trade with China. See, in the Charter Act of 1813, the monopoly of East India Company was ended and the tea trade with China was allowed. But in 1833, even the tea trade monopoly was abolished. Again, the year is not important, but why you have to remember this is because there is something called as continental system. This continental system was imposed by Napoleon on all of Europe, where he prevented trading between Britain and other European countries, sea trade from Britain to other European countries. That was prevented by Napoleon Bonaparte through this continental system. This continental system was imposed around 1807 or somewhere in that era, in that time period. So after this continental system was imposed, the British still survived even without trading with the other European countries. Why? Because they were able to have colonies all over the world with which they were able to reap as much profits as possible, especially the trade with India. At this juncture, the British government decided to end the monopoly of East India Company by the Charter Act of 1813 itself. They ended the monopoly of East India Company by 1813 except for the trade with China, which they let the East India Company monopolize. So as a result of continental system and many other reasons which led to the ending of monopoly of the East India Company. So that is significant, and that's why this question is given. So the first statement is wrong. By 1833, the monopoly which was ended with the exception of tea trade, that tea trade monopoly was also ended in 1833. So the first statement is obviously wrong. The second statement says the Governor General of India was given exclusive legislative powers for the entire British India. They are saying that statement is correct. The Governor General of India now had ultimate powers to enact laws all over the British possessions in India. The third statement, it made the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India and vested in him all civil and military powers. That statement is also correct. And the Governor General of India, the first Governor General of India, happened to be William Bentinck. So, of these statements, statement 2 and 3 are correct. The answer is option C, 2 and 3 only. Consider the following statements. Tipu Sultan established a modern arsenal in Dindigul or Dindugal. The statement is wrong because Hyder Ali, his father, was the one who established the modern arsenal. Second statement, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan introduced the system of collecting land taxes through salaried officials. That statement is correct. See, when the taxes are being collected by salaried professionals, there is reduction in corruption and there is an increase in the amount of land revenue being collected. So, it is because of this system introduced by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan only, they were able to enlarge the size of their economy and their military. So, the second statement is correct, the first statement is wrong. The answer is option B, 2 only. 47. Consider the following statements with regards to the Charter Act of 1853. For the first time, the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General were separated. They are saying that is a correct statement. The Governor General's powers or his position was split into an executive function, an executive arm and a legislative arm. It is this distinction which led later on to the creation of responsible government, creation of parliament. So, the first statement is correct. The second is, it introduced for the first time local representation in the Indian Central Legislative Council. Now, in the first statement I told that the Governor General will have an executive body and then there is a legislative body. In that legislative body, that body is called as Indian Central Legislative Council or Central Legislative Council. This Central Legislative Council had a local representation. When I say local representation, it does not mean Indians. It means people from different provinces, officials from different British provinces such as Bengal, Calcutta and Bengal, Bombay and Madras. So, these representatives from local provinces were included in the decision making process. That is what is the meaning of this inclusion of local representation in the council. So, in this question, both the statements are correct. The answer is option C, both 1 and 2 for the 47th question. Next, the 48th question. Consider the following statements with regards to doctrine of lapse. If an Indian ruler died without a legal male heir, his kingdom would become a part of the company territory. That is correct. This is as per the doctrine of lapse. Second, any lapses in the payment for the maintenance of the military by an Indian king to the British crown would lead to the ceding of territories to the British. Nope. This statement is not concerning the doctrine of lapse, it is concerning subsidiary alliance. So, the second statement is wrong. The first statement is correct. The answer will be A, 1 only. Question number 49. Which of the following are correctly matched? Lord Auckland and ring fence policy, no, that is not correctly matched. Ring fence policy was introduced by Warren Hastings, not Lord Auckland. Ring fence policy is a policy of having buffer states between British possessions and other adversarial states. So, if there is a buffer state in between British territory and some other enemy, then that buffer state will prove like a fence for the British territory. This policy was put forward by Warren Hastings and not Lord Auckland. Lord Lytton and forward policy. No. Forward policy was actually brought by Lord Auckland. Lord Auckland brought this forward policy where he told that there needs to be a land barrier to prevent Russian invasion of India through land. So there he brought forward this forward policy, and that is wrongly matched. Lord Lytton brought something called as policy of proud reserve, and this also deals with some foreign policy where he is trying to establish a scientific barrier, a scientific way of strategizing the foreign relations, and he is creating spheres of influence of British positions in the subcontinent. So the second statement is wrong. John Lawrence with a policy of masterly inactivity, that is correct. See, John Lawrence followed this policy of masterly inactivity, meaning there will be no interference in the Afghan administration by the British. The British took this stance after the terrible ordeal they faced after the first Anglo-Afghan War. So after the Anglo-Afghan War ended, they decided to embrace this policy of masterly inactivity, where they said we will no longer deal with Afghans altogether. That was put forward by John Lawrence. The third statement is correct. The third is correctly matched. The answer for this question will be option C, 3 only. Now, 50th question. Which of the following are incorrectly matched? First, William Bentinck and Mahalwari settlement. William Bentinck was in fact the one who brought in Mahalwari settlement for land revenue. Thomas Munro and Ryotwari settlement, that is also correct. Thomas Munro was the one who brought in who introduced Ryotwari settlement based on the lessons that was learnt from the Zamindari system. And Cornwallis and Zamindari system, that is also correctly matched. Cornwallis was the one who introduced the Zamindari system or the permanent land revenue settlement. So all three are correctly matched. The question is about which is incorrectly matched. The answer will be none of the above. Option D. Question number 51. Which of the following are related with education during British rule? Charter Act of 1813, that is correct. Under the provisions of Charter Act of 1813, they assigned a sum of 1 lakh rupees for the education in India. It was a very meager sum, but it was given, a token sum was given to spur the growth of modern education in India, to the growth of education in general in India under Charter Act of 1813. So this is correct. Wood's Dispatch, that is also correct. Wood's Dispatch also deals with the recommendation over how education should be introduced and spread in India. So both of them are concerned with education. The answer for this question will be option C, both 1 and 2. 52. Which of the following regarding the revolt of 1857 are incorrectly matched? First, Gwalior and Bakat Khan, that is incorrectly matched because Gwalior was controlled by Tantia Top and not Bakat Khan. Meerut is not was not controlled by Tantia Top. Meerut was controlled by Kadam Singh. So the second is also incorrectly matched. Third, Delhi and Kunwar Singh. No, Delhi was controlled by Bakat Khan and Kunwar Singh controlled Bihar. So all three are incorrectly matched. The answer is option D, all the above. '53. What were the reasons for the failure of the revolt of 1857? 1. Poor organization, that is correct. The mutineers were poorly organized. There was no central leader to rally around, so it failed, one of the reasons. The third statement says lack of a leader with an all Indian standing. As I told, yes, there was no proper leader who was acceptable to all of Indians. Bahadur Shah Zafar was made the leader of the movement, but he was really helpless and he was very old and he was just a nominal leader. Only the regional generals and regional leaders were controlling the flow of the revolt. So the third statement is correct. Not more than 1% of the ruling class of India joined the revolt. That is also correct. The ruling class of India, they stayed away from this revolt. In fact, they prevented the revolt from spreading to other parts of India and they actively aided the British. So all the three were the reasons for the failure of the revolt. The answer will be option D, 1, 2 and 3. 54. Consider the following statements with regards to the revolt of 1857. Money lenders were a target of the villagers' attack. This is correct. The rebels of the revolt of 1857 compelled the merchants to fund the revolt. That is also correct. See, the money lenders, they had managed to earn the resentment and disaffection from so many people all over India, and money lenders were one of the primary targets during the revolt of 1857. It is this built up resentment which resulted in the money lenders being targeted at the local level by the locals at the grassroots level. The rebels of this revolt, soldiers and all leaders who participated in this revolt, they were constantly forcing and violently asking the merchants, the traders, the manufacturers for more funds, and they imposed a lots of taxes on them. Why? Because they were short of resources and they wanted these resources to extend their fight with the British. So the second statement is also correct. The answer will be both 1 and 2, option C. 55. Lord Canning said they acted as the breakwaters to the storm which would have otherwise swept us in one great wave. Who is he referring to? Well, Lord Canning, we know, was the one who was actually present in India when the revolt of 1857 started. And here he is referring to the so-called breakwaters who helped the British from becoming extinct in India. So the people who he is referring to here are the Indian rulers. Zamindars and moneylenders supported the British. They did not take part in the revolt. Christian missionaries obviously did not take part in the revolt. The Sikhs and Pathans aided the British in suppressing the revolt. But here Lord Canning is referring to the Indian rulers because no other people in these options had such a great standing as the Indian rulers who actively aided the British in stopping the spread of the revolt and in suppressing the revolt. So these kinds of questions are also asked. So please try to learn the statements given and the significance of those statements, who it is referring to. 56. Consider the following about Sannyasi revolt. It is sometimes called as Fakir rebellion. That statement is correct. Birsa Munda was an important leader of the revolt. That is wrong. Birsa Munda was an important leader of the Munda uprising. See, Sannyasi revolt, like many other British, anti-British, anti-imperial revolts and uprisings, was against the British policies. The Munda uprising was also against the British policies, but the Sannyasi revolt comprised mainly of sannyasis, as the name says, saints, who were essentially fighting for the peasants, who were initially peasants. So these Sannyasi revolts, they contained Hindus as well as Muslim saints, Hindus as well as Muslim preachers, and they all together fought for the cause of the peasants against the British. Birsa Munda fought Munda uprising against the British for the rights of the tribals. And Anand Mat, a semi-historical novel written by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay or Chatterjee, is based on Sannyasi Revolt. That statement is correct. Anand Mat in fact became a very significant novel for motivating Indians to take up the cause of nationalism and the fight against the British. So, in this question, statement 1 and 3 are correct. The answer is option B, 1 and 3 only. 57. When Bakshi Jagabandhu Bidadar's ancestral estate was taken by the British, what did it lead to? The answer, this is a very factual question, the answer is Paika rebellion. Paikas are actually soldiers belonging to the, they are actually sons of the soil of the current state of Odisha. This Paika rebellion started because of the British economic policies and their land revenue policies, and this Bakshi Jagabandhu was actually one of the leaders of all these Paikas, and when his estate was appropriated by the British, then this Paika rebellion broke out. Consider the following about the humanitarian measures taken by the British towards women. 1. Passed the legislation of to abolish sati. That is correct. That was a humanitarian legislation taken towards women. 2. Humanitarian measures taken towards women. 2. Lord Canning enacted the Widow Remarriage Act. That is also correct. This Widow Remarriage Act was drafted by Lord Dalhousie, and this was supported by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the social reformer. And later on, during the time of Lord Canning, this Widow Remarriage Act was enacted. 3rd, encouragement of girl children's education through the Christian missionaries to make them financially independent. No, that is wrong. First of all, the British never encouraged girls' education. Why? Because they felt that there is no point in educating women who cannot be productive citizens for the British administration. They thought that even if women are educated, they are not going to come and work for the government in those menial jobs that they have let the Indians to work on. So, since there is no point in trying to educate women, let's not really focus on that. That was their attitude. See, education itself, one of the main reasons why it was brought into India was to ensure that some Indians are educated to an extent where they can be used for the government for doing clerical tasks. When women cannot come out and work for the government, they completely neglected women's education. Leave alone trying to make them financially independent. They never in fact really tried to make anybody financially independent in the colonial era. So, for this question, the first two statements are correct. The answer will be option B, 1 and 2 only. Question number 59. Which of the following events shattered the general belief of invincibility of the British and encouraged Indians to revolt in the revolt of 1857? First, Anglo-Afghan War, that will be correct. Crimean War, that will be correct. Boers War, that will be wrong. See, in all three wars, the British were heavily humiliated and defeated in many cases, but you have to understand that this Boers War happened in the end of 18th century and the beginning of end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, which is much after the revolt of 1857. The question here is, which were the events which encouraged Indians to revolt in 1857 by looking at these British defeats? Here the options will be 1 and 3 only. So, it is option B. Answer is option B, 1 and 3 only. Question number 60. Which of the following is not correctly matched? That is the question. Major Hudson recaptured Delhi. Now all this we are talking about is about revolt of 1857. Which British commander general recaptured which part of India? So Major Hudson recaptured Delhi, they are saying. The answer is no. Major Hudson did not recapture Delhi. Major Hudson, in fact, he killed the sons of Bahadur Shah Zafar. But he was not the one who recaptured Delhi. It was John Nicholson. He was the one who recaptured Delhi. Hugh Rose recaptured Gwalior. That is correct. General Neil recaptured Banaras and Allahabad. That is also correct. But we have to look at which is not correctly matched. The answer is option A, one only. So as I given the explanation here, General John Nicholson, General John Nicholson, he was the one who recaptured Delhi, and Major Hudson shot Bahadur Shah Zafar's sons. 61. Which of the following is true with respect to the justice system under the British? Equality before law and rule of law was introduced by the British. That is correct. It was in fact the justice system, a clearly demarcated hierarchical justice system was introduced in India under the time of Lord Cornwallis. So along with bringing a hierarchical justice system in India, Cornwallis also brought in, or should I say the British policies, the administration brought in the policy of equality before law and rule of law. Second, these rights, equality before law and rule of law, enabled the common man to claim fair treatment and was able to protect his rights. That statement is wrong. These rights enabled the common man to claim fair treatment. Correct. It enabled the common man to claim fair treatment, but it was still not sufficient enough to protect his rights, because the concept of this equality before law and rule of law was complicated and tedious, very expensive for a common Indian man to seek justice. Given the scenario, the British decided, the common man found that the justice system introduced by the British is highly taxing, it is highly tedious, and they felt as if the previously existing feudal system itself was much better, even though there was large scale malpractices in a judgment, because at least back then they were able to get justice sooner and they were able to get some amount of fair treatment by the people who are awarding justice. So for this question, the answer will be option A, one only, for question number 61. Question number 62. Why do some historians refer to the revolt of 1857 as the first war of independence? First statement, because of its feudal character which is essentially Indian. That is wrong. It is an absurd statement. Feudal character and that being Indian, that itself is debatable, and quoting that as a reason to say that the revolt of 1857 was the first war of independence is not acceptable. That was not told by the historians who claimed the first war of the revolt of 1857 as the first war of independence. Second, because lakhs of Indian civilians actively participated in this rebellion against an alien rule, irrespective of their differences. That statement is correct. See, so many Indians realized that they are being ruled by aliens, and irrespective of their caste, communal, religious, linguistic differences, they came together to oppose an alien rule, and the nationalists who tells that this is the first war of independence, they say that, see, Indians have become united against an alien rule, and this shows that this revolt itself is the first war of independence, they are saying. But that is also, to be objective, not correct, because the Indians who actually fought in the revolt of 1857 had their own personal grievances, and it is based on those grievances only they fought this war, not out of any nationalistic idea as propagated by these nationalists. But anyway, that's not a part of this question. The statements of these two statements, the second statement is often quoted by the people who refer to the revolt of 1857 as the first war of independence to assert their claim. The answer for this question will be option B, 2 only. '63. Which among the following was or were the causes for the tribal uprisings? 1. Efforts of the Christian missionaries, including berating tribal customs and forced conversions. That is correct. In fact, Birsa Munda himself, a Munda tribal, he was forced to convert to Christianity when he was trying to go to the school. So all these led to a lot of resentments. That is one reason. Exploitation by moneylenders, that is also correct. See, moneylenders were considered as outsiders by the tribals, not just moneylenders. The zamindars, the British officials, peasants, whoever were brought from outside and introduced into the tribal lands to turn the tribal lands into cultivable lands. All these people were considered as outsiders, and all of this led to the uprisings from the tribals against the British rules. So the second statement is also correct. The answer for this question will be option C, both 1 and 2. 64. The Polygar revolt of early 19th century was rooted in which of the following? 1. Conflict over the land revenue collection system. That is correct. General discontentment with foreign rule. No, it was not rooted over this. The East India Company taking over the management of the Carnatic provinces from the Nawab of Arcot. That is correct. See, the Polygars or Palayakkarar, they rose against the British, and when this happened was when the East India Company decided to take over the management of the Carnatic provinces from the Nawab of Arcot. They took over the management of the provinces, Carnatic provinces, and it is in these provinces only the Polygars were residing. You have to understand something about the Polygars. The Polygars or the Palayakkarars, they considered themselves to be autonomous, and they do not accept the suzerainty of anybody, including the British. They were ready to accept the Nawab of Arcot as their superior, but apart from him, nobody they were able to accept as their superiors. Even under the Nawab of Arcot, they ruled as autonomous chieftains only. So when the East India Company took over the management of land and affairs in the Carnatic region, that obviously brought them into conflict with the Polygars. And as I told in the first, the conflict over land revenue system. Land revenue were initially collected by the Polygars only, and now the British are saying that we will be the one who are the ultimate authority to collect land revenue, and you cannot collect land revenue. Even if you do, you have to pay us the land revenue, they are saying. So this obviously led into a serious conflict, and that in turn led to mass reactionary incidents against the British. So this, for this question, statements 1 and 3 are correct. The answer will be option B, 1 and 3 only. '65. Consider the following statements. The British conservatives generally respected the Indian philosophy and culture. This is correct. This is something that I explained before. The British conservatives understood that the Indian culture is different from the British culture, from the European culture. Though it is different, they never thought of Indian culture as inferior. they respected Indian culture for what it is and they did not try to change much of what is going on in India. That is correct. Second, the British radicals advocated the introduction of modern Western science, philosophy and literature. That statement is correct. The radicals are groups of people who looked at the Indian culture and saw that the culture is stagnating and it needs improvement. It has to catch up to that of the West. So these radicals, they thought by introducing modern science, literature and philosophy, they will be able to culture and create progress in the Indian society. So the second statement is correct. Third, the Christian missionaries supported the British radicals in this policy. That is correct. See, the radicals were trying to ensure that the Indian society is progressing. The Christian missionaries encourage the radicals in bringing that modern education which will lead to the progress of the Indian society. Why? Because the Christian missionaries thought if progressive ideas are introduced into the Indian society, then spreading of Christianity will be made easier. They felt that these progressive ideas will be helpful in making the Indians understand the evils present in the Indian culture. So the Christians supported the British radicals. Fourth statement, Raja Ram Mohan Roy supported the British radicals. That statement is also correct. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was fed up with the way how the Indian culture has stagnated for centuries together, or at least decades together, and he wanted the British administration to improve, to push the Indian culture forward, and therefore he accepted the methodologies used by the radicals because he in his own right thought that the British will be able to provide the Indians with proper scientific judgment, a scientific temper, and therefore rid Indian society of the evils introduced in the evils of the Indian culture. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy also for his own reasons supported the British radicals and their policy of introducing modern scientific education in India. So for the 65th question, all four statements are correct. The answer will be option D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Next, we will go to question number 66. Hunar Hut, sometimes seen in the news, is related to what? 1. An exhibition showcasing the traditional art and skills is there. Second, an invitation to adopt heritage sites by private, public and corporate sectors. Third, C. A leadership development program for minority women to earn their living. And D is none of the above. Well, the answer is option A. It is an exhibition which is trying to showcase the traditional arts and skills, and it is conducted in different parts of India. So for the 66th question, the answer is option A. This option B, an innovation to adopt heritage sites, this is called as adopt a heritage site scheme. So that is a separate scheme. So this is a separate scheme, but this Hunar Hut is actually about this exhibition for of traditional arts and skills. '67. Consider the following statements regarding Adi Mahotsav. It is a major festival in Arunachal Pradesh as it marks the Tibetan New Year. That is wrong. As a symbol of gesture, cucumber is distributed to all. That is also wrong. For the 67th question, the answer is D, neither one nor two. Why? Because this Adi Mahotsav is actually a festival of tribals from all parts of India. All the tribal traditions, tribal cuisine, tribal commerce, tribal customs, they were all celebrated and appreciated in this Adi Mahotsav. So none of these statements are talking about any of that. So the answer for this question is option D, neither one nor two. '68. With reference to the Nirbhaya Fund, consider the following statements. The fund is dedicated for the safety and security of the women of India. That is correct. We all know about the sad events which happened on December 2012, where a girl was raped on a moving bus, and the entire nation was disgusted by the events, and the government took a lot of measures after that event to prevent such happenings. So for that, this Nirbhaya Fund was created, which will be spent for the policies and decisions taken for the safety and security of women in India. The first statement is correct. Second, it is a lapsable corpus fund drawn from Consolidated Fund of India, it is saying. Well, this statement is wrong, because it is a non-lapsable corpus fund. See, the difference between lapsable corpus fund and non-lapsable corpus fund is that in a lapsable corpus fund, the fund which is allocated in a particular year, if it is not used, then the fund will be carried over to the next year. A non-lapsable corpus fund is where it has to be spent in that year. So it has this money which has been allocated in this Nirbhaya Fund has to be spent on that particular year. In every year, a certain amount of money is allocated, and in that year, that money has to be spent. That is the case for this Nirbhaya Fund. So it is a non-lapsable corpus fund. So the second statement is wrong, and the question is about which of the following statement is not correct. So the answer will be option B, 2 only, for the question number 68. Leap and ARPIT, A-R-P-I-T, recently seen in the news is related to what is the question? A. Supercomputers developed by IIT Madras for forecasting weather changes. No, that is not correct. Nuclear torpedoes developed by DRDO. No, that is also not correct. Mission to find extonium neutrons in space. That is also not correct. Initiatives for the development of higher education in India. That is correct. See, LEAP and ARPIT, you should be able to associate these two terms with education. So do not try to go just by the terms. If it goes like LEAP or something, don't think of some supercomputers or some military doctrines or something. It is with regards to higher education in India. 70. Consider the following statements regarding Bhumi Rashi portal. 1. The portal allows for totally digital and paperless processing of land acquisition system. That is correct. See, land acquisition is a huge problem in India, and there is so much of bureaucracy, red tapeism, and e-governance, digital India. These are some of the things, these are some of the policies put forward by the government in order to cut the red tape and reduce the amount of time taken for transactions for land appropriation and to pay the compensation amount to the people from whom the land was acquired. So this Bhumi Rashi portal was in fact a portal which allows digital processing of land acquisition system. That is correct. 2. The portal has been integrated with the public financial management system. That is also correct. So for the 70th question, both statements are correct. This public financial management system means it is a system through which the compensation for the appropriated land will be paid to the people from whom it was appropriated to. All of this is electronically managed, and for the question 70, both the statements are correct. The answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Question number 71. The term checkers plan is sometimes mentioned in the news in the context of the affairs of which country? These countries are given here, these countries are given here, and it is actually with regards to UK. See, this Chequers plan is a plan about how the relationship of Britain and European Union is going to be after Britain exits the European Union in the March of this year. So, the Chequers plan will deal about how the economic and trade relations are going to be, how the people's movement between the borders of UK and the rest of Europe is going to be. So, all of this is written, it is being constantly negotiated as of now between Britain and the European Union, and this plan which Britain has proposed, that plan is called as Chequers plan. It is called as Chequers plan because it is constructed by the British Prime Minister and her cabinet, Theresa May, and it is constructed at the residence of the British Prime Minister, which is called as Chequers. That is why it is called as Chequers plan. So, moving on to the next question, question number 72. The Living Planet report is released by, these are all factual questions. The Living Planet report is released by the World Wide Fund for Nature. See, the Living Planet report is about biodiversity, the extent of biodiversity. So, this particular report is released by World Wide Fund for Nature. This is a factual question. Please remember these kinds of facts. 73. With reference to I-ROV tuna recently seen in the news, consider the following statements. It is India's first commercial underwater aerial drone. That statement is correct. I-ROV tuna is actually an underwater aerial drone. 2. It can facilitate underwater film making and surveillance for defense sector and marine research. That is also correct. So, in the question number 73, both statements are correct, but the question here is about which of the following is not correct. So, the answer will be D, neither 1 nor 2. That is the answer for the question number 73. Consider the following statements regarding Apatani tribe. The Apatani cultural landscape is recognized as UNESCO's World Heritage Site, they are saying. Well, it is proposed to be recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Their agriculture system is extensive without the use of any farm animals or machines, they are saying. That statement is also correct. The first statement is in fact wrong because the Apatani cultural landscape is yet to be recognized by the UNESCO, and the agricultural system is extensive without the use of any farm animals or machines. That statement is correct. The first statement is wrong, the second statement is correct, but the question is about which of the following statement is not correct. So, the answer for the 74th question will be option A, 1 only. Now, to say something more about this Apatani tribe, you should know that the Apatani tribes are also called as Apa, and they reside in the state of Arunachal Pradesh in India. And this Apatani tribes, they practice something called as rice and fish cultivation, where they will have paddy, and in that paddy land, they will of course be planting paddy food grain crops, and also in that water they will allow the growth of fishes, where at the time of harvest they will be able to extract the paddy, the rice grains, as well as the fishes. So, this is considered as one of the most exquisite way in which humans have managed to coexist peacefully with nature without creating much of an ecological imbalance. So it is because of this reason only the Apatani cultural landscape is proposed by the UNESCO to be a World Heritage Site. '75. Inspire 2018 recently seen in the news is related to promotion of skill development and entrepreneurship. No, that is wrong. Promotion of health and hygiene in schools, wrong. Promotion of sports in schools, wrong. Promotion of energy efficiency is correct. This is again a factual question. Please remember that. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is a deal related to which of the following? It is again a factual question. JCPOA. This JCPOA is with regards to the Iran nuclear deal. The Iran nuclear deal is between Iran and P5+1. Iran, a country on one side, P5+1. P5 here means permanent 5, comprising of USA, China, Russia, France and Britain. These are the P5. This one is Germany. So these are the major powers with which Iran has made a nuclear deal. And that nuclear deal, this arrangement is called as Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So the answer for this question is option C for 76. 77. Consider the following statements about India International Cherry Blossom Festival. So this is also something that has come in the news. It is the world's only autumn cherry blossom festival. That is correct. Autumn cherry blossom festival. This is the only autumn cherry blossom festival. That is correct. And this cherry blossom festival is celebrated in Meghalaya. 2. It is being organized by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. No, that is wrong. It is organized by the government of Meghalaya and other governmental institutions. So the first statement is correct, second statement is wrong. The question is about which of the statements is correct. The answer will be option A, one only. 78. Which of the following statements are correct with regards to Yuva Sahakar Cooperative Enterprise Support and Innovation Scheme? 1. The scheme has been launched by National Cooperative Development Corporation. That is correct. NCDC is a statutory corporation established by an act of parliament. That is correct. It is a sole statutory organization functioning as an apex financial and developmental institution exclusively devoted to cooperative sector. That is also correct. 4th, it falls under the Ministry of Finance. That is wrong. If I am right, it falls under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So please refer the answer key once more. Anyway, in this particular question, the first 3 statements are correct. So for the 78th question, the answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. 79. Consider the following pairs. So on one side we have tiger reserves and on the other side we have states. So we have to match whether these tiger reserves are present in this particular state. Dudhwa, they are saying West Bengal. No, this is wrong. Dudhwa is in Uttar Pradesh. Satkosia, Odisha, they are saying this is correct. Satkosia is in Odisha, and Bandhavgarh in Rajasthan, they are saying no, that is wrong. Bandhavgarh is in Madhya Pradesh. So of all the 3 of them, only 2 is matched correctly. The answer is option B, 2 only for 79. 80. Consider the following statements with respect to neutrinos. Which of the following statements is not correct? They are saying 1. Neutrinos are harmful to human body. That itself is not correct. So the answer is option A. But let's look at the other options too. They are nearly massless. They can pass through the earth. They help in understanding dark matter. All three statements are correct. They are all correct with regards to the nature and character of neutrinos. The answer for the 80th question is option A. 81. Consider the following statements with respect to electoral bonds. Only the political parties registered under section 29A of the RPA 1951, which secured not less than 1% of the votes polled in the last general election to the House of the People or the Legislative Assembly of the state, are eligible. That statement is correct. The electoral bonds are valid for 1 month from the date of issue. No, that is not correct. The electoral bonds are valid only for 15 days, not 1 month. The bonds are encashed in authorized bank account only. That is correct. The bonds can be purchased by any citizen of India. That is also correct. So here only 2 is wrong, and the question is about which of the statements are not correct. So the answer for the 81st question will be option B, 2 only. (82) Consider the following pairs: housing finance companies, national housing banks. So they have given NBFCs on one side and their respective regulators on the other side. So we have to see whether they are correctly matched. Housing finance companies are in fact regulated by National Housing Bank. That is correct. 1 is correct. Chit funds, they say Ministry of Corporate Affairs. That is not correct. Chit funds are managed by respective state governments only. Nidhi company, state governments? No. Nidhi company are actually managed by Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Venture capital fund company and SEBI, they are saying that is correct. So of all of them, 1 and 4 are correctly matched. So for the 82nd question, the answer is option B, 1 and 4. (83) The term Good Friday Agreement sometimes mentioned in the news in the context of. The answer is very straightforward. It is Northern Ireland. See, Ireland and Britain, the UK, had not been friendly towards each other over the course of history, and the UK, the Britain, had always tried to go and occupy Ireland, and often that led to very violent clashes amongst the two countries, two neighbors. They are just separated by a small passage of sea. So even today, the northern part of Ireland, known as Northern Ireland, is occupied by Britain. Even though the United Kingdom is here, Ireland is here, the northern part of Ireland, Northern Ireland, that is still a part of the UK territory, and here is Ireland, a completely different sovereign country. So this Northern Ireland belongs to UK, and the rest of the country is called as Ireland, as we know today. This Good Friday Agreement was an agreement between the Ireland, the sovereign Ireland Republic, Irish Republic, and the UK, where they both agreed that Northern Ireland will continue to remain with UK, but there will be free movement of people between Northern Ireland and Ireland, and some other trade agreements, development of institutions across the border is agreed. So this agreement is called as Good Friday Agreement. So here the answer for the 83rd question is option D. (84) Consider the following statements. Ease of doing business report is released by World Bank. That statement is correct. In 2018, report, India ranks second among BRICS countries after China. That is wrong. India ranks third. Third, enforcing single window clearance system in Delhi helped improve India's ranking. That is also correct. By creating such platforms where businesses are finding easier ways to get clearances to conduct their businesses, India was able to leapfrog in their rankings. So, of all three statements, statement 1 and 3 are correct. So, for the 84th question, the answer will be option C, 1 and 3 only. '85. Consider the following statements regarding National Company Law Tribunal, NCLT. National Company Law Tribunal was constituted under the Companies Act 2013. That statement is correct. It adjudicates issues relating to individuals and Indian companies, they are saying. Well, the second statement is not correct. The second statement is not correct because it adjudicates issues relating to individuals and Indian companies, it is saying. It adjudicates issues related to Indian companies only. It adjudicates issues to, not to individuals. That much you should know for certain. So, in the 85th question, the first statement is correct, the second statement is wrong, but the question is about which of the following statements is not correct. So, the answer will be option B, 2 only for question number 85. '86. Spinnaker, recently seen in the news, is related to, once again a factual question. It is the world's largest supercomputer that works similar to human brain. Option C is the answer for question number 86. '87. The military exercise Dharma Guardian 2018 is a joint exercise between which two countries is the question. The answer is India and Japan. Option C. These are all factual questions. So, please remember the names of the different military exercises India has with other countries. '88. Consider the following statements regarding the scheme Poshan Abhiyan. 1. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is the nodal agency to implement Poshan Abhiyan scheme is given. That statement is wrong because it is under the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So, the first statement is wrong. It is them who are the nodal agency. 2. Second statement, one of the main objective of the scheme is to reduce the stunting from 38.5% to 25% by 2030. No, this statement is also wrong because it aims to reduce the stunting from 38.4 to 25 by 2022. So, both statements are wrong and the answer for the 88th question is therefore option D, neither 1 nor 2. '89. Which of the following statements does the section 7 of RBI deal with? This section 7 of RBI has been in the news recently and it is one of the hotly debated topics. So, what does it deal with? 1. The business that RBI can carry out, no, that is wrong. Establishment and incorporation of Reserve Bank, no, that is wrong. Right to issue banknotes, no, that is wrong. The power of government to issue directions to RBI, that is correct. See, the recent issue between the government and the RBI was regarding the autonomous nature, the autonomy given to RBI. So, by invoking this section 7 of the RBI Act, the government has been trying to dictate terms to RBI as to what it should do, and this was not liked by the RBI governors and many other economists because they always say that the Reserve Bank has to be kept autonomous in order to ensure that politics and economics of the nation are kept separate. So, this section 7 has been debated widely in the news and that essentially deals with the power of the government to issue directions to RBI. So that is the answer for this question. 90. Consider the following statements. Bureau of Energy Efficiency is a statutory body under the Ministry of Power. Well, that statement is correct. The scheme assists in developing policies and strategies with the primary objective of reducing energy intensity of the Indian economy. That is also correct. So for this question, both the statements are correct. The answer is option C, both 1 and 2. 91. With reference to PAHAL scheme launched by the Union government, consider the following statements. It is a scheme for direct transfer of LPG subsidy to consumers all over the country. That statement is correct. It is the largest direct cash transfer scheme in the world. That statement is also correct. So for 91 also, the answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Consider the following statements regarding Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Which of the following statements are correct? It aims to achieve universal enrollment of all children in the age group 16 to 18 years in elementary education. No, that is wrong. It aims for 6 to 18. It should be 6 to 14, not 18. Second, it covers all districts in the country. That is correct. Third, it is being run with the support of World Bank. That is also correct. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan SSA, it is being run with the aid from World Bank. So of these three statements, 2 and 3 are correct. The answer is option B, 2 and 3 only. 93. Pragati scholarship scheme of the Government of India is related to, it is again a factual question, it is option B, technical education to girls. So to encourage technical education to girl children, this Pragati scholarship scheme was introduced by the government. 94. Shala Darpan, an initiative by HRD Ministry, Human Resource Development Ministry, is related to what? Option A, online portal to monitor implementation of SSA, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Option B, providing online training to teachers. C, online portal for schools to evaluate their own performances. And D, online school management system for Kendriya Vidyalayas. The answer is option D, online school management system for Kendriya Vidyalayas. These are all factual questions, so please focus on such facts. Consider the following statements. The International Criminal Court ICC has jurisdiction to prosecute individuals for the international crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. It is an agency of United Nations, it is given. Well, the second statement is certainly wrong. The first statement is correct. For the 95th question, the answer will be option A, 1 only. ICC is not a part of UN. ICJ is a part of UN. Rome Statute has been ratified by which of these countries? Now, this Rome Statute is the base on top of which International Criminal Court has been functioning, it has been established. This Rome Statute is supposed to create this ICC in such a way that this International Criminal Court will not replace any country's sovereign courts, but it will complement those courts. That is the idea behind this Rome Statute. And this Rome Statute, it has been ratified by many countries, and India, China and US are not those countries. All three has not ratified the Rome Statute. So the answer for this question is option D, none of the above. The headquarters of ICC, I think it is in Hague. Please check again with the explanation that you have got. So, the answer for this question is option D, none of the above. 97. Consider the following statements regarding International Court of Justice, the ICJ. The first statement says the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is the judicial organ of the United States. That statement is correct. Second, non-UN members may also become parties to the court's statute, to the ICJ statute. That is also correct. So, for this question, the answer is option C, both 1 and 2. 98. Which of the following is or are not the members of OPEC, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries? Well, again a factual question. Iran is a member, Mexico is not a member, Russia is not a member, Congo is a member. So, the answer for this question 98 will be the ones which are not the members of OPEC. So, it will be option B, 2 and 3 only. 99. Consider the following statements with respect to OPEC once again. Any country with a substantial net export of crude petroleum which has fundamentally similar interests to those of member countries may become a full member of the OPEC. The first statement is correct. The second statement, the mission of OPEC is to coordinate and unify the petroleum policies of all countries and ensure the stabilization of oil markets? No, the second statement is wrong. See, the OPEC countries, they try to coordinate and unify each other's petroleum policies under one umbrella, under one scheme. That is correct. But it is not to ensure stabilization of oil markets. It is to ensure that they have control over the oil prices. It is to ensure that the people who are investing in oil business, they are able to get profit, and it is OPEC itself is a form of a cartel where they dictate the price of oil by coordinating the amount of oil being produced amongst the members. So, that is the concept of OPEC. The second statement is wrong, the first statement is correct. The question is asking which of the statements are correct. So, the answer is option A, 1 only. The 100th question, the last question. Point Calimere Wildlife Sanctuary is located in which of the following states? A factual question. The answer is option A, Tamil Nadu. So, with this we have completed all of the 100 questions for test number 7, which comprised of modern Indian history, current affairs, some international organizations, some map questions, some questions from India yearbook. So, I hope that you have seen this entire video and it is useful for you. So, please try to understand the rationale behind asking such questions, because these questions dictate what is needed from the students, what is needed from the perspective of UPSC that the students have to learn. So, it's keeping them in mind that these questions have been devised. Please ensure that you take lessons from what you have seen in this discussion and try to implement that in your preparation. If you are scored well and good, please keep it up and continue to improvise. If you are not able to score as much as you expected, that's fine. The test is to teach you to make all the mistakes right now so that you don't make mistakes in the UPSC exam. So, please focus on the discussions that have been given, the answers that have been discussed, and try to change the way how we are approaching UPSC with every test that you face. So, having said that, once again, I wish you all a happy new year, and please try to study well for the next test. Thank you.